What is up, Dragon Ball fans? Pat here, and today I'm going to do a different kind of video than I normally do. Today I'm going to give you guys 5 budget decks. One of the biggest things I hear from people in the community is that competitive decks right now are too expensive, and I wanted to dispel that slightly by saying that on a budget you can actually build a pretty good deck, one that can at least take down a local and might even perform well at a regional level. So definitely don't let that scare you. If you guys are new to the game and are thinking about jumping in, these are great starting points for you. If these deck lists in any way help anybody or you know somebody who would benefit from them, I highly encourage you guys to share this video. I really want to dispel this myth that Dragon Ball Super has become too expensive lately and that you can't actually make a deck that functions or can take down a local on a budget. Most of the decks, I'd say of the 5 in here, 3 of them can be built for the price of a booster box or less, and the last 2 aren't too much more expensive than the cost of a booster box. So before I jump into it, guys, got to give a shout out to the sponsors always. Alec Pastrana over at beardedcollectibles.com. Bearded is going to give you the best prices on sealed product. If you want to build any of the decks in this video, you can do so, and then once you're done that and you want to bolster your collections, consider Bearded Collectibles for all your sealed product needs. So let us move on to the actual deck lists. So first up, I want to talk about Gold Frieza, and this is, I think, the best entry point for most people who are trying to get into the Dragon Ball Super card game who don't really have a collection. The cost of Frieza is roughly around $75, and this is an excellent mid-range deck that does a lot of things. It can play aggressive, it can play a control game if it needs to, but the most important takeaway from Golden Frieza and why it's the one I wanted to start with is you can build Golden Frieza almost entirely from bulk commons and cards found in the Magnificent Collection. If you're a new player and you don't know what the Magnificent Collection is, it is basically the equivalent of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Structure deck that came out around 4 months ago. With 2 Magnificent Collections, which, you should be able to build most of this deck. So for those of you who have local game stores at this point, Magnificent Collection is marked down to around $25 to $30, down from its $40 MSRP. Roughly for $50 plus a handful of commons and some choice rares and super rares from the new set that are under, I'd say, maybe $2 each, you should be able to assemble most of this deck. So Frieza as a leader is great because he has great draw power and great resource management. Every turn he can switch energy to active mode, which allows you to play more cards per game, and since you draw so many cards, you will always find most of the cards that you need. He's really easy to play, and on top of that, he's powerful to boot. This leader has recently gotten a top 16 finish at a regional, so this is definitely, I think, the best landing point for a new player because the deck is strong enough to win a local and also perform at some of the higher level events. I want to give you some highlights in the deck. You will see cards like Fu Shrouded and Mystery and SS Broly All Out Assault here on your screen. These cards are largely staples and good finishers in the current format, which is set 9 at the time of the recording of this video. And they also get in the Magnificent Collection cards like these Brolys down here at the bottom. These 9-cost Brolys are promos that are relatively cheap for you to pick up, but most of the cards that are here, Time Magic, Broly Demonic Intimidation, and Fu Shrouded, and SS Broly Assault all come in the Magnificent Collection and are strong finishers and strong options for you to win the game with. Most of these other cards you see in this middle row are largely bulk commons. One of the ones to highlight, though, is Cold Bloodlust. This is a card that's restricted because of how powerful it is. It's one of the best disruption cards in the game, and only Frieza's army characters can play this, so usually only Frieza's. Overall, though, this is a very, very strong list. It can, again, do pretty much everything, and it's really simple to play as well. This is a leader that has been around since set 1, so he kind of is, keeps it simple, where some of the other leaders we might talk about on this list might be a little more complex. Again, best for you if you are a new player who is not looking to spend a lot of money but get a lot of bang for your buck. Next up, let's talk about Broly. Broly is a relatively new promo leader, and he has put up some pretty impressive numbers so far at regionals. PPG Orlando was relatively recently, where this took a top 8 spot. So again, another really strong leader. Broly was very, very expensive when he first came out, but now that Set 9 is out, excuse me, and prices are a little bit lower, Broly is a relatively cheap pickup, and he got some really nice tools in Set 9 that are relatively cheap as well. This is basically the most budget-friendly deck that I can think of that you can build besides Demigra, but we won't talk about that in this video. So Broly is, a fan favorite, so I kind of wanted to pick him over a more obscure character like Demigra. I know there are a lot of Broly fans, though I might personally not be one. So I really wanted to make sure that for those of you guys who are Broly fans of the franchise, you had a deck that you could actually play and take to your local game store and do well with. So Broly is largely, all the power in this deck comes from the leader. The leader draws a lot of cards every time when you attack. There is a combo step where you can discard cards from your hand to give him extra power. Every time you enter the combo step and you combo with at least one card, he will draw an extra card. The main selling point of the Broly leader, though, on the backside is that Broly is so powerful that twice per game when he is low on life, he can kill anything, no questions asked, at any time, which is really, really powerful. One of the best parts about this deck is this is kind of like an aggressive rush deck. Is this card here, Frieza Army Healing Pod. It is a turn 1 card that you will play, and anytime a card enters from your discard pile, you will get to draw a card. Many of the cards that you see in this deck, such as Overflowing Bio Warrior Army and Beerus Godly Majesty and this Nappa Demolition Man, are cards that are considered when they enter play to trigger this Frieza Army Healing Pod. Overflowing Bio Army off of its effect by discarding a card. Beerus Godly Majesty can be triggered off of Broly, Rapid Barrage, and Android 19 Energy Fiend, so that will get you him into play for free to draw a card. And then, due to the current ruling of the game, anytime you combo with Nappa Demolition Man, he's considered to enter from your discard pile, so you will again draw Frieza Army Healing Pod. Have some extra Broly synergy here with Broly Everlasting Vengeance, which is just a cheap promo for you to pick up. It again has synergy with Frieza Army Healing Pod. And then our big finishers here are Broly, Rapid Barrage, and Broly Tragedy Foretold, which are just generically strong cards that can come out early in the game and keep your opponent locked down and make it so that it's hard for them to defend their life. You get SSB Gogeta from the movie, really, really strong removal card that puts up some pretty decent numbers. And then our big finisher here is Kaioken Son Goku. This is one of the strongest battle cards ever made, and it's a relatively cheap pickup because right now, Kaioken is, I guess, a lot more available than he used to be. He used to be kind of like a chase card, but he has, been around for a couple sets, so he's basically only like $2 or $3 at this point. And for how strong he is as a finisher, I don't really think you can get much better than that. This is a very linear deck, a very aggressive deck, but it's still powerful nonetheless because Broly, he basically can't really be stopped by too much. So again, this is for those of you guys who are Broly fans or aggro fans or are just looking for something cheap to take down your local. Obviously, with some extra money pumped into this list, you can probably make this regional viable, but this is a deck that I know that there are people at my local that play something very similar to this and have done very, very well, consistently getting within the top 3 every single week. So next up is Thick Boy, Joran. Joran is another, I guess, fan favorite character for how strong he is. This is arguably one of the stronger decks that is coming out of Series 9. This is a brand new leader and a brand new archetype, and it is very, very powerful. This deck can be built for slightly more than the cost of a booster box. When you consider the tax on the MSRP cost of a booster box, you can basically build this entire deck for it. This Joran deck is just incredibly powerful in all aspects of the game. It's just a really, really strong shell. It's good for people who like very simplistic decks. It's a very linear, straightforward deck where you're just playing big dudes and just trying to attack as consistent, constantly as possible. This is a deck where I feel like if you were a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh, older Yu-Gi-Oh, you might really appreciate this deck. This deck is a successor deck. Successor is a new mechanic featured in Series 9, and it is very reminiscent of the Synchro Summoning mechanic from Yu-Gi-Oh! For those of you guys who don't know how Successor works, what you'll do, for example, this Topo has Successor 6, so you will choose 6 cost worth of cards. So, for example, you could use this 4 cost Frieza and this 2 cost Dr. Joran in play to total 6 to summon this Topo from your hand. That's how Successor works. Joran basically gets to every turn free play Universe 11 cards that cost 2 or less, many of which, like this Topo, Bestower of Justice, even though he says he's a 2 cost, his effect makes him a 4 cost. So there are lots of ways to get higher costs on the board for Successor with him using his ability for free. On top of that, he has arguably the strongest front side leader in the game, and then his backside leader offers you a lot of defense and makes it very difficult for your opponent to kill you. What that means if you're a newer player is he affords you a lot of opportunities. If you make mistakes, then Joran's ability, you can fall back on it and kind of recover from it. So he is very easy and new player friendly. And again, very, very powerful deck. Dispo gives lots of draw power and early game aggression. Topo basically answers almost everything. And SS2 Teen Gohan is one of the best finishers in the entire game and a very, very cheap pickup. He is a starter deck card. It's crazy when you think about it, but cards like Fushada and Mystery and SS2 Teen Gohan are amongst the best finishers in the entire game, and they are found in starter decks, which is why I wanted to, again, dispel this myth that you don't need high-end cards or expensive cards from Draftbox 4 to compete. There are many viable archetypes and very powerful finishers in the format that you guys can play in order to compete. This deck is really, really good, and I definitely think that this is very easily capable of winning your local tournament. And again, this will put up respectable numbers at a regional. I don't know if it would be good enough to get you your North American, European, or other region finals invite, but it is very close. With a card like Swift Warrior Dispo, if you were to swap this out for more expensive options, then this list can definitely get there. This is the total package. And definitely the easiest deck, I think, probably for a newer player or somebody coming from Yu-Gi-Oh! To pilot. So, going to one of the 2 more expensive decks on this list, we have Bibbity. Bibbity is a straight-up aggro deck, and it is only 1 color, so if you are intimidated by the other decks on this list that were multiple colors, this one is very straightforward. So Bibbity, how he works is when you have no cards in your hand, he gets to turn into this Majin Buu on the back, and the Majin Buu has the effect of as many times as you want per turn, you can discard a card from your hand to destroy a 3 cost or less card, or give him 5k, and it's not once per turn, so you can just keep doing it as many times as you want. And at the end of your turn, if you have no cards in your hand, you get to draw up to 5 cards. Most of the cards that are featured in this deck have the ability to go into other forms of Majin Buu as long as you have no cards in your hand. So the general play strategy of the deck is to empty your hand as fast as possible, and then on turn 2 or 3, you want to resolve this Majin Buu Ghastly Rampage super rare to start to go up the Buu chain. So this Majin Buu says when you have no cards in your hand, he can level up into any 3, 4, 5, or 6 cost Black Majin Buu of your choice, but once you go into the one of them, you can't go into it for the rest of the turn. So what you'll do is you'll start with this Majin Buu, and you can level up into this Majin Buu Piccolo Absorbed, or this Majin Buu Gotenks Absorbed, or this Majin Buu Gohan Absorb, and then finally Kid Buu. You can kind of mix and match between anything until you get to Kid Buu, because as you know from the show, once you get to Kid Buu, that's the final form of Buu, so you're kind of locked there. This Kid Buu is a very good card for aggro decks, because other decks can't draw outside of their draw step or off of their leader effects, while he has attacked since the previous turn. He's also just a strong finisher, being able to give himself triple strike. Triple strike is one of the best keywords in the game for closing out a game. You have cards like Pui Pui and Bibbity to help smooth over your synergy. Pui Pui stops disruption, which is super invaluable for an aggro deck. You kind of want to just attack as much as possible, and Pui Pui makes it so that pesky control players can't really respond to your stuff. Bibbity, and then this card, Malicious Mimicry over here on the right. Those are linchpins of the deck. If you don't draw this 2-cost Buu, or it somehow ends up in your discard pile or your energy area, this Bibbity or Malicious Mimicry promo will easily get you back on track. You have other tech choice options here, such as Beerus Godly Majesty, which you can pitch off of this Bibbity Unrepentant Sorcerer to get another free attacker. And Furthering Destruction Champa is basically just a one-of staple in a lot of aggro decks because it helps close the game out of nowhere. This is a really cheap list, honestly. Aside from Majin Buu, Supreme Evil, Majin Buu Ghastly Rampage, and Malicious Mimicry, almost everything else you see on your screen is basically pennies. There's not really too much expensive in this deck. You're basically only really buying these super rares and this promo, which at the time of this video recording are the newest set. So odds are at your local game store, many players might actually have extra copies of these that they are willing to sell you for even cheaper than the $108 price tag for this deck. This is a really, really strong deck. It is borderline a tier 1 deck or a tier 1 deck in the current format. Basically, the only real thing that you're missing from this deck is a secret rare, which if you're a newer player, you don't really need a secret rare right away. It's something to aspire to and get later on. But yeah, one of the 2 to 3 really powerful black secret rares will really put this deck over the top. But for the baseline list, this is really powerful and again, very capable of easily sweeping your local. And again, this list as is probably good enough to perform at a regional level and get you a North American finals invite. And I can't really say that for a lot of other decks. This is probably the cheapest I can think of for a tier 1 deck in the entire game. So if your goal is to be competitive at the highest level and you're a big fan of aggro, then this is definitely your deck. And finally, the last one is Android 21. This is the main reason I really wanted to do this, because the Android 21 Facebook group constantly complains that Evil 21, which is a control-based deck, is far too expensive to play. The normal version that you sometimes see in Constructed can run you somewhere of $750 to $850 US, which makes it amongst the most expensive, if not the most expensive deck in the entire game. This is a budget version of Evil 21 Control, and it comes in at just around $133, which is actually insane. Yes, you could also modify this list if you really wanted to play Piccolo, if he is more your speed. Piccolo, of course, obviously a tier 1 leader that is heavily played in competitive. You can modify this deck ever so slightly to include cards like Special Beam Cannon and Hidden Potential. So yeah, this is the cheapest control shell that I can think of for you guys to try to play. Some of the highlights in the deck include Android 16 Energy Amplification. If you're playing blue-green as a color combination going forward, this is a staple, and this is where the bulk of the money of the deck is coming from, so it is a worthwhile investment and worth spending the money on. Android 21 Violent Predator is one of the premier control finishers, and she's only about $2 right now as of the time of this recording. Android 21 of Bad Omen is a really strong blue-green starter deck card that allows you to close the game out of nowhere with uncounterable burn damage. And then you have other cards like Frost Deadly Poison, which is probably the best counterspell in the format. Again, another cheap pickup right now. It's only about $1 or $2 a piece. Vegeta the Cruel, again, another amazing strong counter card in this game, and he's only a couple bucks a piece as well. Android 21, A Brilliant Idea, is arguably the best card in the entire deck, and she's only going for like 3 cents on TCG Player. So yeah, really, really strong card. Gives you a lot of removal every turn, as well as critical, which is arguably the strongest keyword in my opinion in the game. You also get this SS Broly All Out Assault that, again, we talked about previously with Golden Frieza. Great card overall. It's just good on offense and defense and a solid beat stick. Champa the Trickster and Crusher Ball and Hellfighter 17 the Neutralizer round out our counterspell package. And for finishers, we have this Chilled the Cruel, which you will ramp up to 5 energy and use cards like Frost Deadly Poison, Zamasu's Sacred Disbelief, Champa the Trickster, or Crusher Ball to trigger his ability to be played for free. He's just a 25k double strike that is a really powerful beat stick. Overall, again, this is a really strong deck. If you're somebody who comes from Magic and likes to play control, consider playing either Android 21 or Piccolo. I think you guys will have a blast doing that. This is probably the most expensive deck on this list, but again, I wanted to prove to you guys that you could actually play every archetype on a budget. Control for $133 is pretty much unheard of in a lot of card games. Usually Control requires a lot more expensive cards. So again, this is a really strong and solid Control shell that you can definitely play at your locals and do very well with. So that covers it. I think I hit something for new players, for Dragon Ball fans, for fans of aggro, fans of mid-range, fans of Control. So there you go. That is 5 decks on a budget. Again, if you guys enjoyed this video or you're new here, please consider subscribing. It helps us out here a ton at 3XG Productions. Remember to like, comment, and again, especially share it with new players if you guys think this will help them out. If you are looking to level up your game once you've got the basics down, consider subscribing to our 3XG Patreon. I will link to it down in the description below, as well as an overview video done by my wonderful friends Matt and Richard Zapp, explaining all of the benefits of being a 3XG Patreon in 2020. So, again, my name has been Pat. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Until next time, boys. Okay, bye!